We don't need the bloodline from the lower class.
Father of my daughter's fiancés looked at us as if we were trash. Today was our first meeting, yet he had constantly mocked us, calling us a post-single mother family. I could bear it if he ridiculed only me, but I couldn't stand him mocking my daughter. I was about to stand up and confront him, but my daughter stopped me.
I will move my savings to another bank if you are speaking like that.
The man is the head of a local bank. However, to my daughter's words, he laughed sarcastically and said, "Go ahead, do whatever you want." But half a month after this incident, his family would regret this for the rest of their lives. My name is Karen Robinson. My husband passed away when our daughter, Mandy, was in elementary school. Ever since, I've worked at a transport company and raised Mandy by myself. Mandy has started her own business and is managing it quite well. Although we live separately, we're just a 30-minute drive away from each other, so we often spend our days off together. However, lately, I hadn't seen Mandy as much. Even when I ask her out, she often turns me down, saying she's busy. Then, right when I had a hunch, she said,
Mom, I want to marry a person I'm dating now.
My suspicion turned into certainty, and I was thrilled. Well, I'd miss Manny when she gets married. I was more happy than sad. That's great news. Please bring him over sometime. And the young man Mandy brought home was truly wonderful.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Ethan Mitchell.
With a flushed face and nervousness, the young man greeted me while looking straight into my eyes. I was certain from the first look that he'd make Mandy happy. After that, the three of us had a pleasant conversation. Speaking of which, I would like to meet your parents before the engagement. When should I meet them? However, Ethan's face suddenly clouded.
About that.
What Ethan hesitantly revealed was quite surprising. Ethan's father is the head of a local bank and has always favored his talented elder brothers, often neglecting Ethan. Just before entering high school, Ethan left home and grew up at his uncle's place. Since then, he's been distant from his family.
If we meet them, I think they'll make you two feel bad.
Ethan said with a saddened expression. But not having a formal introduction. We'll become relatives, and there will surely be occasions where we'll have to meet. I was worried, imagining situations like having to introduce ourselves for the first time at places like funeral. Seeing my concern, Ethan, with a determined face, said,
You're right. I'll handle the arrangements. I'll make sure to prevent any unpleasant situations as much as I can.
I'm sorry for asking too much.
No, it's okay.
Ethan replied with a bright smile. At that time, I was too optimistic. They're still family, right? They'll surely celebrate when you decide to get married. I'm sure we can understand each other if we talk. I had such naive thoughts. Then, on the day of the meetup, Mandy and I headed to the designated place. It was one of the fanciest restaurants in the state.
I'm nervous. It's my first time in a place like this.
Me too, honey. Heart racing, we headed towards the room.
Excuse me.
And upon opening the room's door, "You're late. Can't po folks tell time." We were met with such a rude greeting.
Hey, Dad.
Quiet, Ethan. I came here today because you begged me to, all right?
That's right. And even Kevin took the time to come. You should be grateful, Ethan.
A flamboyantly dressed couple threw sarcastic remarks at Ethan. Beside the couple sat a young man, glaring maliciously at Mandy.
I came to see Ethan's fiancée for myself. Seems like she's just right for Ethan's level.
What did this guy just say? The shock of such harsh words left us speechless.
I heard you're a single mother.
Well, yes, why? Ethan's father asked, and I replied without thinking. Then he chuckled disdainfully.
Did your husband cheat on you? It's woman's own fault when she gets abandoned.
What?
Single mothers are always po. You want to marry Ethan because I'm his wealthy father, don't you? I know you're just after the money.
Ethan's father glared at Mandy and I as if we were filth.
Too bad for you. I won't be giving Ethan a single dime. All of my assets are for Kevin.
Kevin, Ethan's brother, nodded in agreement with a smug grin on his face.
Someone from a single-parent household is just right for a loser like Ethan. If she was for Kevin, we wouldn't want her low-class bloodline. I'd have rejected her immediately, but for Ethan, it's fine. Marry him or whatever. I don't care.
The insults lit a fire inside me. I could handle it if it was just me, but I couldn't stand seeing Mandy and Ethan get insulted too. I was about to stand up and retort when
Is that okay with you, saying all that?
Mandy's words held me back.
I use your bank, you know. After all this, I can't keep my account there. I'll move my savings. Are you okay with that?
Mandy challenged Ethan's family with a threatening tone. But they burst into crude laughter.
We won't have any problem if a young lady like you closes your account. Go ahead.
Moving your savings. How much? Like 10 cents?
Mom, the fees would cost more than the balance.
The three of them laughed uproariously, tears streaming down their faces. But Manny watched them with cold eyes.
That's fine, right? Got it. Don't come crying to us later. Ethan, Mom, let's go.
We left the restaurant, leaving the still laughing trio behind. Once outside, Ethan immediately apologized.
I'm so sorry. I'm utterly ashamed to have a family like that.
Tears filled Ethan's eyes.
If you want to break off our engagement after this, I wouldn't blame you.
Don't say that, Ethan. I'd never break our engagement.
Mandy said forcefully, lifting Ethan's face.
Even if you wanted to break it off, I won't let you. You're definitely marrying me.
Mandy,
Seeing them getting lost in their own world, I deliberately cleared my throat to get in between them. Well, Mandy is not marrying that family. She's marrying you.
Karen,
If you're up for it, you could even be adopted into our family. If you never want to see your family again, that's totally fine. I'm sorry for insisting on that meet and greet. I guess I was being too optimistic. It's not Ethan who should apologize. It's me. The assumption that families understand each other was misguided. Feeling disappointed in my own naive perception, I slumped my shoulders.
our family is the one at fault.
No, the fault lies with me.
Enough, both of you. How about we all go grab a bite to eat? I'm getting hungry.
Mandy interjected, settling our argument. Exchanging a wry smile, Ethan and I agreed. Later, the three of us enjoyed a pleasant meal together. Speaking of which, Mandy, you're really going to transfer that money.
Yes, I plan to.
That bank is going to have a tough time. Half a month after the tumultuous meeting, Mandy and Ethan arrived at our home looking a bit weary.
Mom, we're back.
We hope we're not intruding.
What's wrong? You both look exhausted.
Actually, we came to discuss something with you, Mom.
The story they shared was indeed surprising. As she'd promised, Mandy had closed out the bank account under Ethan's father's bank. She transferred a whopping $1 billion from her account to another bank. Considering the enormous sum, she'd informed the bank of her intent to close the account a few days in advance over the phone. Given the staggering amount involved in the closure, Ethan's father had come to the bank.
He was shocked to see me. He asked, "How does a young lady like you have such wealth?" So I explained everything to him from scratch. This money combines what I've earned and my dad's inheritance.
My husband was an entrepreneur who built a massive transport company from scratch. This job market is quite profitable. After he passed away and I took over as CEO, the company faced some challenges. However, thanks to our dedicated employees who had supported him, the business is now thriving, and our daughter Mandy seemed to have inherited her father's entrepreneurial skills. During her high school years, she founded a company and launched a youth-oriented brand, which turned out to be a huge success. After stabilizing the business, she sold the youth brand to a major corporation. Now, she runs a brand for adults. Many who were fans of Mandy's brand during their student days have grown up and continue to patronize her brand for adults. With such loyal customers, her business seems to be on a steady path. But had Ethan's family not known about Mandy's status as a major depositor before the meeting? Curious, I asked.
That's on me. I haven't been in proper touch with my family for years. When I asked them to meet Mandy, I tried telling them about her, but my dad wasn't interested and didn't listen.
Plus, my name is pretty common, right? So they probably didn't make the connection.
I see, so that's what happened. So, you successfully transferred the money.
Of course, he was begging, but I closed the account anyway. Sorry, Ethan, but seeing the guy who insulted me as a young lady begging and crying was somewhat satisfying.
Ethan gave a wry smile, saying it was no big deal.
And actually, I'd always planned to close that account at that bank. The transfer went smoothly.
Really?
There's been some talk among fellow business owners.
Ethan's father had been the bank's CEO for about a decade. Since he took over, it seems the bank had been making some risky moves without considering the financial strength. Consequently, the bank's financial situation had become quite strained in recent years.
There were merger discussions with other banks, but knowing how the CEO is, the negotiations never progressed. The bank's situation kept deteriorating.
Given this backdrop, Mandy's decision to close her account would undoubtedly hit the bank hard.
My older brother is set to be the next CEO, my parents boasted proudly. But I think the bank will probably go under before he takes over.
Ethan's prediction hit the mark. Just 6 months later, the bank declared bankruptcy. Even though it was a local community bank, it had a significant negative impact on many people. And then Ethan's father was arrested for embezzlement. It seems Ethan's mother and his brother are now homeless. The other day, a rather scruffy-looking man came to our job interview. It turned out to be Ethan's brother. When he realized I was the president of the company,
You took in my brother, so hire me.
He exclaimed unbelievably. Upon hearing this, the employees were livid and kicked Ethan's brother out unanimously. Our tough-looking driver warned him, "Don't ever show your face here again," so I doubt we'll have any more dealings with him. Ethan also received a request for financial assistance from his mother, but
If you keep bothering us, I'll hire a lawyer.
he threatened. After that, the contact abruptly stopped. Later on, Ethan and Mandy happily get married. Ethan became a son-in-law, and they both seem to be living together happily. Seeing them reminds me of my husband, and it fills my heart with joy. I genuinely hope they can have a blissful married life, just like my husband and I did.
When I was 6 years old, my parents passed away in a car accident. I was taken in by my maternal grandmother and grew up under her care in the countryside, cultivating a small field. Although I was devastated and rarely went outside, my grandmother watched over me and took care of me patiently. We were poor, but thanks to her amiability, I managed to grow. We couldn't afford any toys, but I was content with just paper and colored pencils. I loved to draw. The rural scenery, the sunset over the sea, the starry night sky. I was never short of subjects. But the most enjoyable thing for me to draw was my grandmother. I'd never get bored of drawing her and continued it every day.
Wow, Bob, you're really good at drawing. I'm so happy you're making me look so beautiful.
Do you think I could be a painter when I grow up?
Of course, you'll become the #1 painter in America.
Her words sounded like magic to me, and before I knew it, I started dreaming of becoming an artist. But at the age of 17, during my junior year of high school, my grandmother passed away. She was in the hospital for just half a year. I was planning to attend an art school in New York, but due to financial reasons, I had decided to get a job. I wanted to work and ease my grandmother's burdens, but she was gone before I had the chance. While holding back my tears, I was sorting out her belongings. I found a box containing dozens of drawings I had made, which brought me to tears again. That's when I found a bank passbook in the box, with my name on it. When I opened it, I was shocked to see the balance, $20,000. What? $20,000? When did she? As I was holding the passbook, something fell out of it, a handwritten note from my grandmother.
Dear Bob, go to college. This is my last wish.
I broke down and cried out loud. I wondered how long it took her to save that amount. Thank you, I'm sorry, Grandma. Holding the passbook tightly, I continued to cry. Thanks to my grandmother, I was able to attend an art school in New York. I started living alone in a crummy apartment. My tuition could be covered by the money my grandmother left me, combined with a scholarship, but I had to earn my own living expenses. I found a well-paying night job at a bar. Being a country boy and not particularly affluent, I was laughed at by my seniors. It was hard to remember the names of the cocktails, but I enjoyed learning about the new world.
Hey, lady, don't just take stuff without asking.
The boss's voice echoed from the back alley. There was an old lady who had been picking up empty cans from the bar's trash can every night.
You're going to throw them away anyway, aren't you? So, what's the problem?
It's really annoying to have homeless people like you hanging around every night.
Who are you calling homeless? You saucy kid.
Excuse me.
I hurriedly stepped in between them. Hey, boss, it's fine. Just think of her as a garbage collector, okay? With a tisk, my boss went back to inside. With a sigh, I turned back to the old lady. What will you do if he hits you? Remember, loose lips sink ships.
Oh, you know such fancy phrases considering being a young man.
While thinking what a talkative lady she was, I helped her put the empty cans into a bag. Starting tomorrow, I'll collect these and leave them here for you every night, okay? Just take them quietly. The old lady stared at my face and said, "You're unusually kind for a young man these days." Her gentle, smiling face reminded me of my late grandmother, and a wave of nostalgia washed over me. From that day on, I started talking to the old lady every night. The boss wasn't too pleased, but I was a valuable worker who could work until the bar closed, so he turned a blind eye. Eventually, the old lady started to come during my break time. My co-workers laughed at me, saying, "Bob, you've got a peculiar fetish. Is she your type?" But talking with this old lady warmed my heart as it reminded me of my grandma. When I offered her canned coffee, the way she carefully held the can with her small, wrinkly hands, blowing on it gently to cool it down, was exactly like my grandmother.
So, are you going to become a painter in the future?
One day, after hearing about my past from me, the old lady asked me that question. I'd like to, but can I? It's still difficult with just a college degree.
What do you mean?
Everyone's studying abroad. I don't have that much money and flexibility, so at best, I could become an art teacher, I guess.
What's the use of giving up before you even try?
I laughed at her sharp words. You're right. I'm currently working on a painting for an exhibition. If I get a sponsor through that, my dream might come true.
That's the spirit. Good kids like you are blessed by God.
I felt a bit awkward being praised like I was a child. My break was about to end, so I waved to Maher and went back into the shop. During that time, apart from my classes and job, all my time was spent working on the painting I was planning to exhibit. I was drawing my grandmother standing in the nostalgic countryside scenery, but I felt like it was starting to resemble the old lady who collects cans. I guess it can't be helped that the image of the person I see in real life is starting to outweigh the image in my memory. But I didn't feel bad about it. Only when I was talking to the old lady in the unfamiliar city life of New York, my mind would become calm. Not a mommy's boy, but a granny's boy. Thinking that, I laughed to myself. The painting was completed in 3 months and successfully exhibited. I headed to work feeling refreshed and in high spirits. Friday nights were exceptionally busy, and I was finally able to take a break. As usual, when I went out the back door into the alley, the old lady was sitting on the ground. What happened? Are you feeling ill? As I squatted down to look at her face, she looked pale and was clutching her chest. Are you in pain? Are you okay? When I hugged her shoulder, she groaned and started to lean towards me. Boss, call an ambulance. I shouted from the back door, and the boss, looking annoyed, stuck his head out and said, "Are you stupid? Just ignore her." I got angry and shouted back, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then picked up the old lady and started to run. I could hear my boss yelling at me, but I ignored him. There should be a large general hospital nearby. With my legs, trained from living in North Dakota, I ran at full speed. Seeing me rushing into the hospital with the old lady on my back, a nurse ran towards us. She was immediately put on a stretcher and taken to the treatment room. Feeling relieved, I slumped down onto a chair in the waiting area. I was drenched, and the feeling of my shirt stuck to my back was disgusting. After sitting there for a while, a woman dressed in what looked like a receptionist's uniform approached me.
Are you a family member of the patient?
I shook my head when asked. No, she's just an acquaintance.
I see. Then we will contact your family.
The woman bowed with a smile and went back inside the counter. I don't even know the old lady's name. Does the old lady even have a family? A sense of unease started to well up inside me. It was hard to imagine that the old lady who seemed to be living off collecting cans had a family. By the way, who will pay for her treatment? I didn't even bring my wallet. In any case, I thought about going back home to get my wallet and stood up. At that moment, a nurse came out of the treatment room. How's the old lady?
She's fine. It seems like a minor episode. She's currently on N4 and sleeping.
I see. That's good. I let out a sigh of relief from the bottom of my heart. When I told her that I needed to go back to get my wallet, the nurse said that won't be necessary.
We've managed to contact her family, and her son will be here soon.
Really? I was taken aback. I had assumed she didn't have a family. If her son is coming, she should be okay, I think. With that thought in mind, I decided to go back to my workplace without visiting the sleeping old lady. After that, I was fired. Well, that was obvious. I repeatedly apologized to the furious store manager, but he didn't forgive me, so now I'm looking for a new part-time job. Because of being fired from the shop, I haven't seen that old lady since then. I thought about sneaking to meet her in the back alley, but finding a new part-time job was the priority now. After all, my livelihood is at stake. I searched for job vacancies online, but I couldn't find a good one. 2 weeks had passed since I got fired from the bar. As my class ended and I was getting ready to leave, my seminar professor was calling me loudly from the entrance of the lecture hall. Wondering what it was, I approached him.
Incredible, Bob.
In his excited state, the professor started patting my back energetically. What's going on? Feeling somewhat unnerved by his unusual beaming smile. Usually he's so stern.
Your painting, the one you submitted to the exhibition, it was bought. And guess who bought it? The chairman of the Taylor Group.
What? I was utterly stunned. The Taylor Group is one of the top corporations in America. Their chairman bought my painting. I couldn't believe it.
And the purchase price was $100,000.
The professor whispered. I thought I was going to faint.
Apparently, he wants to meet you personally. We received a contact. You need to go to their headquarters next Sunday.
Are you sure?
Good for you, Bob. Good for you.
Despite the professor's almost tearful joy, the situation didn't seem real to me. This must be a dream. If not, it's a miracle. Unbelievably, the promised day arrived and I dressed in a formal suit, heading to the headquarters. As I was looking up at the huge open ceiling, a woman as beautiful as a movie star appeared and led me to the chairman's office on the top floor.
I've brought him here.
Please come in.
Swallowing hard, I entered the room. In the middle, there was a luxurious sofa with an elderly woman and a man in his 50s seated. As I approached, I saw my painting on what seemed to be a marble table. The woman slowly stood up and looked at me. You? I involuntarily pointed at the woman. The person smiling at me was the old who had been collecting cans.
Well, are you surprised?
The old lady laughed, seeming extremely pleased with the successful surprise. At what?
Sorry to startle you. Please have a seat.
Told by the man, I sat across from them. No matter how many times I looked, it was undoubtedly the old lady.
Let me introduce myself again. I'm Helen Taylor. I'm the chairman of the Taylor Group, believe it or not.
I'm her son, Dallas. I serve as the CEO.
I still couldn't find my words. The chairman? The cane-collecting old lady is the chairman of the Taylor Group.
We really appreciate you helping my mother. I apologize for the delay in expressing our gratitude.
The CEO bowed his head sincerely. Still, I couldn't believe what was happening. Feeling I had to say something, I spoke out the thing that had wanted to know. Why were you collecting cans? The chairman burst out laughing.
It must seem strange, right? I was a single woman raising 3 children amidst the chaos after World War II. I started a small shop with the money I earned from collecting cans, and that's the foundation of today's Taylor Group. So, can collecting is my lifestyle. I won't stop till I die.
No matter what I say, she won't listen. We're sorry if it caused you any inconvenience, Bob.
Oh, because of me collecting cans there, we were able to meet like this.
The chairman laughed again. Finally, I began to grasp the situation.
It was purely coincidental that I bought your painting, Bob.
Saying so, the chairwoman began to speak. She went to the art exhibition because she wanted to see my paintings. However, the chairwoman, who didn't know my name, had no idea which ones were mine. While she was looking here and there, imagining which one could be mine, she was completely drawn to one particular painting. She pointed at my painting on the table and asked the chairwoman,
"Isn't this me?"
Well, yes, it might be you, ma'am."
"What do you mean it might be?" "I thought it was me at first sight."
At first, I was painting thinking of my late grandmother. But along the way, it turned out to be just like you. So I guess that painting is indeed a picture of you.
See, my heart trembled the moment I saw it. I wanted it so badly and did a lot of research. Then, when I found out it was your painting, Bob, I was impressed.
The chairwoman showed her excitement with a clap of her hands.
This is the first time I've seen such a wonderful painting, and knowing that you painted it made me really happy. Thank you.
Then, it struck me. The painting was bought for $100,000. I'm happy that you like it, but $100,000 is too much. I can't accept it.
It's your rightful reward. Take it and go abroad.
She suddenly said that,
Bob, you are talented. The $100,000 is an investment by the Taylor Group for your future. Go study more, become a fully fledged artist, and come back.
The chairwoman said this with a determined look on her face, then returned to her usual smiling old lady look and continued.
I may not look like it, but I have the ability to see through people. You will undoubtedly become a wonderful artist. The Taylor Group will always support you.
She said and reached out her right hand.
I'll be picking up cans, staying healthy, and waiting for you to come back, Bob.
I gently took the chairwoman's hand. Feeling the warmth of her hand, I realized once again that this wasn't a dream. After that, I graduated from college and headed for France. With gratitude for the two important old ladies in my life, I boarded the plane, vowing to myself to become a fully fledged artist and return. The painting I made is carefully displayed in the chairwoman's office.
Stop it. The CEO's wife, Mrs. Rachel, slammed the traditional sweets I had brought onto the floor. She breathed heavily, and her expression, which made her anger apparent, was intimidating. I'm sorry. The sweets scattered on the floor. The recipe I learned from my grandmother, who was skilled in making sweets, was something I could replicate very well. I felt miserable. I started preparing it several days ago and working hard to make it for the celebration of the chairwoman's longevity.
Do you really think my Mel would eat such cheap sweets?
Tears overflowed in response to the words that were directed at me. What a nuisance, added the CEO, Mr. Robert. My mom is not in good health, and yet, he clicked his tongue in disapproval. I'm really sorry. When I looked up, I saw the chairwoman, Mrs. Cynthia, staring back at me with tears in her eyes. My name is Chelsea Smith. I'm 38 years old. It is embarrassing to say, but I'm still single, and I haven't had much experience with men. Reflecting back, I've had a few men who cared for me, but I just couldn't move out of my house. I loved my grandmother dearly and didn't want to be away from her. So, as relationships progress, the conversation would lead to the possibility of living with my grandmother, right? But as soon as that topic came up, the men I dated always run away. Huh, what about my parents? My parents passed away in a car accident when I was very young. I was in early elementary school at the time. Then, I started living with my grandparents. I had everything I needed and was very happy. Well, stories of protagonists who suffer from mean grandparents would be more exciting, I guess. I'm sorry. I led a mundane life. Perfectly ordinary, without any particular hardship. Losing my parents was extremely sad, though. Thanks to my grandparents who dealt with me seriously, I think I was able to recover at an early stage. The story I'm about to tell happened at the chairwoman's longevity celebration. Mrs. Cynthia, the chairwoman, started living with her son and daughter-in-law, the current CEO, after her husband, the previous CEO, collapsed from a heart attack. The sudden collapse of the CEO had a significant impact on the company, and Robert, who was not only his son but also an employee, had a hard time taking over. Ever since her husband's death, the once cheerful Cynthia's face lost its smile, and she started to visibly weaken. So it became the job of the CEO's wife, Rachel, to follow in Cynthia's footsteps. What happened then? Ever since she lost her husband and her job, Cynthia had been sinking into depression. I often saw Cynthia, frail and weakening, in the neighborhood and hesitated to approach her. I didn't really have anything appropriate to talk about. I'm very unsociable, and it took a long time to get along with people in the same department. Even more so with the chairman's wife. It would be rude to speak casually. There's also a rumor in the office that Rachel is obsessed with organic food, that her meals are simple and unbalanced. It seems she's quite particular about her own lunches. If you were caught eating something like instant noodles within Rachel's sight, she'd get very upset. With such concerns, the rumors about the chairwoman were circulating among the employees along with voices of worry. A longevity celebration, is that correct? I had been called by Miss Rachel to discuss something. It was about inviting Miss Cynthia to our office next Thursday for a party.
Let's go all out and celebrate, even get catering. And to spread the word among all employees, please handle the printouts and emails.
Rachel said. Do you want me to take care of the venue decorations and the catering arrangements? I asked. Oh no, that's fine. A friend of mine will take care of it. Her restaurant is really good. Rachel showed me a page from a magazine featuring a chic cafe.
This place is also vegan.
Vegan?
That means they don't use any animal-derived products.
Really? No matter how many times I read the explanation, I couldn't quite grasp it. But when I heard her saying we don't eat any meat or fish, I felt a sense of terror realizing that Miss Rachel was involved with something unimaginable. I wondered if Cynthia would be okay. I know that having biased opinions isn't good, especially as an adult. But we've been eating these things for so long. If they were suddenly taken away from us, wouldn't it upset the balance inside our bodies? No, veganism does exist, so I guess you could survive. It seems there is always a world unknown to me, no matter how old I get. Despite my anxiety about Rachel's long life celebration, I went on with my work. The next day, I posted the long life celebration announcement on the notice boards on each floor, and then sent out an email to all employees. Being in the General Affairs Department, which also doubles as a jack of all trades, a task or two like this was a piece of cake. Are you going to bring anything to celebration? My colleague, John, asked, and I found the piece that had slipped out of my mind. I'll play it safe with a handkerchief, said John, pouting his lips. I have to go to the department store over the weekend. He seemed a little reluctant. As for me, in a company mostly comprising women, I felt like they received many small gifts. I don't want to give the same gift as others do. I racked my brain for a good idea and decided to make traditional sweets my grandmother taught me. She didn't own a shop, but she had a fair number of fans who loved her traditional sweets, and many people came to her house just to get them. My grandmother, who was good with hands, was not only good at making traditional sweets, but also knitting, embroidery, and was truly admirable. I was rather clumsy, but still, I loved making traditional sweets with my grandmother on weekends. Brewing and drinking tea with my grandparents after the meticulous work of making the traditional sweets. Even now, when I think back on it, it's the warmest memory. When I got home from work and before I started cooking, I pulled out a notebook where I compiled the recipes my grandmother taught me. Which one would be good for Cynthia? Since it's summer, something refreshing would be nice. With every turn of the page, my clumsy handwriting and the illustrations of the completed sweets drawn by my grandmother tugged at my hot strings. Oh, I miss Grandma. My grandmother was very kind. Even when I couldn't do the decorations well, she patiently taught me. She sincerely engaged with everything I wanted to do until I was satisfied. The next day, I finished work early, so I went to a grocery store to get the ingredients for the traditional sweets and made a prototype. I did a better job than I expected, and I couldn't wait for the day to give it to Cynthia. The celebration party started on time, and Cynthia, the guest of honor, was brought on stage, and Rachel gave the opening speech. As I gazed at the catering, a few of the female employees muttered complaints.
I wanted to eat meat.
While it was popular with the women, the men seemed unsatisfied. Still, several male employees piled up their plates saying, "It seems healthy." Soon after, it naturally transitioned to giving presents to Cynthia. Looking at the line, it seemed about 40% had brought something. Cynthia opened the gifts in front of everyone and thanked each one personally. This is something my grandmother taught me, I said nervously as I handed over the traditional sweets, and Cynthia's fluffy white hair bounced happily.
Hey, what is this?
But it seemed Rachel was different. She snatched the box of traditional sweets from Cynthia and threw it on the floor. Everyone was baffled at first, but when a bystander nearby let out a small scream, all attention was drawn to the scene.
Don't give her such a thing. Stop it.
I just stared at the sweets scattered on the floor.
How could you let my mother eat this?
Robert, who had heard the commotion, rushed over.
What happened?
She was giving your mother traditional sweets. Homemade ones.
Homemade? There's no way my mother would eat such commoner sweets. Robert laughed. I crouched down, starting to pick up the sweets, muttering I'm sorry. Cynthia was the one who raised her voice. You people. She crouched next to me and began scooping up the bean paste that had fallen to the floor. Mill, this is disgraceful. Please stop. Rachel tried to help Cynthia, grabbing her arm.
Please stop. Enough is enough.
Cynthia's words made Robert and Rachel turn pale as they tried to soothe her.
What's happening? Why are you all shouting like that?
This young woman's grandma's my dear friend. She saved my life. And you treat the traditional sweets she left behind like this.
Tears streamed down Cynthia's cheeks as she shouted. Rachel, holding onto Cynthia's arm, tried to calm her down. Mill, please calm down. Okay. But Cynthia shook off her hand vigorously, saying, let go of me.
I'm old, and I've put up with a lot because I'm relying on you guys, but I've reached my limit. I will do what I want.
Mom, calm down, okay? I'm sorry about the sweets, okay?
It's not so simple to forgive.
Cynthia remained resolute. Then Cynthia went back on the stage and switched on the microphone.
I'm not rejecting healthy meals like the catering my daughter prepared today, but I declare, I'll eat what I want, and I'll drink what I want. I'll do whatever I want. Just because I'm getting on in years doesn't mean I should live a dull life. My life should always be exciting and adventurous. That's how I want to live.
When Cynthia finished, she breathed heavily, and the scattered applause gradually grew louder.
I apologize once again.
After the party, she called out to me as I was about to leave.
The traditional sweets you gave me was treated like that. I finally managed to express my feelings. Thank you.
I didn't do anything. Cynthia held the damaged box that held the sweets tightly.
The moment I saw this, I thought it was like what Emily used to give me as a gift. Emily was always on my side. Whenever I was going through a tough time, Emily would always make me traditional sweets. You have no idea how much it supported me. This time too, Emily and you gave me courage.
I had no idea you and my grandma were close. Cynthia smiled gently. Please make the sweets a guy, she asked me, her eyes welling up with tears. I sat in front of the home altar, reporting the events of the day. Why didn't you tell me you were friends with Cynthia? I was very surprised. Apparently, Cynthia kept it a secret because she thought I might act overly formal if I knew we were acquainted. Besides, you're very diligent and thoughtful. If you knew Emily and I were friends, you might think you got the job because of connections, not your abilities. Cynthia had laughed. True. Now I can handle my job, knowing their relationship doesn't bother me. But if I had known that when I still made a lot of mistakes and had to learn the ropes, I might have been overwhelmed by feelings of self-blame, thinking that I caused trouble for the company by getting in through connections and possibly being crushed by guilt. Life works in mysterious ways. Grandma, I think I'm going to try making traditional sweets again. I was excited to make them after a long time. Maybe one day I'll make some that I come up with myself. I wonder if Cynthia would like it. The recipe book, handed down from my grandmother, looked well used, the cover worn and weathered, seeming to reflect the years it had seen. Please keep watching over me, everyone. It's okay. I'm doing fine. Don't worry. After finishing telling Today's event with a smile, I headed to the kitchen to start making snacks. I'm still thirsty, so I'm gonna drink a beer in the fridge. I'm off tomorrow. I can finally kick back and relax to my heart's content. I'll try making some prototype of new sweets. Looks like it's been a while since I've had a lazy weekend coming up. If anyone makes my little brother cry, I won't forgive you.
Almost all of my childhood memories feature my sis, Sharon, who is 5 years older than me. When I was young and weak, I was often bullied and ridiculed by the neighborhood kids, called names like Skinny. Whenever I came home crying, Sharon would get as mad as a hornet, broom in hand, and chase the neighborhood bullies around with a face that could scare a demon. She, covered in dirt and scrapes from all over, would always say this with a proud stance and a broom over her shoulder.
I'll always protect you, Terry.
My name is Terry Harold. I've been working in sales at a major printing company for 3 years now, a 25-year-old office worker. I'm always busy working. When I was 13, our single mother passed away from illness, and since then, I've been living with my older sis, Sharon. After graduating from college, I moved out when I got a job. Sharon took over our mom's role, attending high school and working at the same time, so I wouldn't feel the loneliness of being parentless. She really took care of me and our home. I can't thank her enough. Since it was hard to live on our mom's survivor's pension alone, Sharon took a part-time job to make ends meet and left the insurance money our mom had left us to pay for my college, and never touched it, knowing that she was a top student with dreams of becoming a teacher and was studying hard for college. I always felt guilty. Right after our mother passed away, I once walked past the family restaurant where she worked. Inside, fashionable high school girls were enjoying sweets and studying with their friends. My sis, on the other hand, seemed to have made some mistake and was bowing her head in apology to a customer. She can't even have fun like other high school students. I couldn't bear it and hurriedly left.
Are you studying properly? Do you want me to help with anything you don't understand?
When she came home from her part-time job and said that while peering at my desk, I snapped. Didn't you have dreams of becoming a teacher? You should go to college. Quit your job. She, who had been looking at me in surprise, said, my greatest wish is to help you become a successful adult. Don't worry about anything and just study hard. Then she gently stroked my head. I was so moved that I couldn't stop the tears from flowing. We weren't wealthy even when our mother was alive, so we were used to being poor. But life after our mother passed away was even worse. Sharon would only buy clothes for me.
I think this will suit you, Terry. Try it on.
She smiled up at me, and her clothes had holes mended here and there. When I told her to buy clothes for herself, she'd laugh and say, I have nowhere to wear them to. Her specialty, stir-fry, was the only dish on my plate that contained meat. Whenever I tried to put meat on her plate, she'd refuse, saying she was on a diet. Despite her claims of dieting, she had a supermodel-like figure without an ounce of fat. One day, a classmate of mine stopped by our house to borrow a book on his way home from school. Sharon welcomed my friend and served macaroni cheese for dinner. When my friend tilted his head and said, "What's this?" I was internally panicking, but it was too late. We use more milk than cheese. It's delicious. Enjoy, she said with a smile. The next day, the guys in my class started calling me Milk. I just let them talk and didn't pay them any mind, but a few days later, an incident occurred on my way home from school. As I was walking alone, 3 of my classmates chased after me from behind.
Mr. Milk, let's walk home together, huh? LOL.
What's for dinner today, eh?
It's a cup of milk. Heat a lot.
They ridiculed me and gave me a hard time. I was so annoyed and turned around. Hey! Just as I was about to grab one of them, Sharon appeared in front of me. Sharon, she stood there calmly and spoke.
I'm sorry, Terry. It's because of me. But don't bother with these losers.
Then she turned around and showed them a video on her phone of us just now.
Are you guys idiots? Doing this sort of thing? You want to throw your future away? Their parents will cry.
We winded you?
My classmates faltered. She let out a dramatic sigh, leaned into the trembling guys, and spoke.
Please be nice to my little bro, or else you'll be in big trouble.
Her eyes, already narrowed even further, instilling fear. Guys hurriedly responded, "We're so sorry," and quickly ran off. I just laughed out loud, looking at Sharon, thinking I'll never beat her. Thanks to my powerful sis, I was able to make it into what the general public would call an Ivy League university. I got a job at the largest printing company in the industry, and when I got the job offer, Sharon cried and celebrated with joy. I was more pleased to see her happy face than the fact that I had received the job offer.
Harold, let's go grab a bite.
My coworker, Nick, called out to me. Looking at the clock, it was pointing at 12 noon. I said yes, and quickly got up and put on my jacket.
Mitchell, get over here.
When I turned around, I saw Mitchell, who had been assigned to this department a month ago, being scolded by Manager Johnson.
That Johnson, always dumping his work on mild-mannered Mitchell.
Nick said, clicking his tongue. I heard he not only dumps his work on others, but he also took credit for his subordinates' work and got promoted to manager. Is that true? Looking at Mitchell, who was bowing and apologizing to the manager, I couldn't help but feel irritated and asked,
Yay, he seems to have done some pretty bad things before he came here. He always targets the weak.
Mitchell is a kind and quiet guy. Ever since we joined the company, he was always smiling, always taking the lead in doing undesirable tasks, a hard worker, and trustworthy. He might be slow at work, but he's careful and precise. I've been saved by him several times. I hope he's all right, I murmured to myself as looking at Mitchell, and Nick said, don't get involved, you'll be his next target, and patted my shoulder. Then, one day, Mitchell returned to the office in an unusually high spirit. Mitchell, did something good happen? As I called out to him from across the desk, Mitchell replied with a happy face.
I got an order for the packaging of a spa salon's original products.
What? That salon has, like 120 branches nationwide. Man, congrats, Mitchell. Mitchell had been diligently visiting this spa salon for years, building up trust slowly through small jobs. Since I know how hard Mitchell had worked, I was as happy as if it were my own achievement. That evening, I invited Mitchell out for a drink. Let's go drinking tonight. I'll treat you to celebrate your big order. However, Mitchell, who had been so energetic during the day, seemed down and said, "I'm sorry, I'm just not in the mood," and quickly left for home. From the next day, Mitchell was off work due to poor health. What could have happened? He was so excited. As I was gazing blankly at Mitchell's desk, Nick told me,
"He lost a big order from an aesthetic salon to Johnson."
"What? But Mitchell spent years on."
"Seems like Johnson gave Mitchell another small task."
In anger, I slammed my desk. Nick quickly calmed me down, saying, "Harold, calm down. Don't do anything unnecessary." I jumped up from my seat. The chair hit the wall behind me with a loud noise. Shaking off Nick's hand that was trying to stop me, I walked briskly toward the manager's desk. "Manager, is it true that you took the spa salon job from Mitchell?" I shouted so loudly that it echoed through the office. Manager Johnson, removing his glasses, said, "What's the meaning of this, Harold? Answer me, did you take Mitchell's job?" I yelled at the manager, leaning on his desk with both hands.
I did not steal it. Mitchell said the task was too much for him and asked me to take over. You're too rude.
He, red-faced, stood up and yelled back, banging on his desk. "Liar. Mitchell spent years getting that job. He was so happy, he would never say something like that. You're just a useless hyena who can only dump your work on others and steal their work." He stood up, his face bright red, wincing and shaking, and shouted, "Harold, you'll regret this. Get the hell out of here." Immediately, Nick rushed over, apologized, and forcibly took me to the break room. He gave me a glass of water.
"Harold, what on earth were you doing? He's still your boss." "Well, you're not wrong about what you said. But still, be careful from now on. He's going to try to crush you."
"I'm ready for it." I said that and drained my water in one gulp. 1 month later, I had arranged to have dinner with Sharon on this day. I made a reservation at an Italian restaurant that she loves.
Sorry. I got caught in an annoying phone call right as I was leaving.
She sat at the table and looked at me curiously.
Have you lost weight from not eating properly because you are living alone, right?
That's not true. I've just been a little busy recently. What do you want to eat? Don't hesitate to order. It's on me. I spread the menu out cheerfully and showed it to her.
This is quite a nice restaurant. Do you come here with your girlfriend?
She asked me as if teasing, while looking at the menu. I don't have a girlfriend. What about you? Do you have a boyfriend?
Yes, I do have a boyfriend.
What? Who is he? Are you going to marry him?
Oh, stop it. I'll introduce him to you soon.
She said shyly and hid her face with the menu. I felt a little complicated. Of course, I want her to be happier than anyone, but I also felt a little lonely. Glancing at her, I saw a clover pendant swaying on her chest. It was something I bought with my saved pocket money at a street stall as a memento for her 20th birthday. Are you still wearing that? Doesn't suit a 30-year-old woman. I'll buy you a new one. As I said that half embarrassedly, she replied, "Leave me alone. I like it," and gently stroked the pendant. I felt a little embarrassed again. After a delicious meal, and sipping on a well-paired wine, and talking with her for the first time in a while, my tired heart felt a little more energized. It's okay. I can keep going from tomorrow, I told myself over a glass of wine. Then suddenly she leaned over and asked, "So, what really happened?" "Huh?"
"Terry, your sis isn't blind."
She stared into my eyes and said, "I couldn't hide anything from her." Since that incident, I had been harassed in various ways by manager Johnson at the company. Ignoring me was a given. I was isolated in the document room and made to organize documents. I was forced to make a huge amount of unnecessary documents, and when I submitted them, they were thrown in the trash in front of me, saying I don't need it anymore. From washing the company car, distributing flyers for customers in front of the station, I was hardly allowed to do any decent sales work, and a month was about to pass. I thought about talking to my boss about it, but manager Johnson used Mitchell, who had finally recovered and started coming to work, as a shield, saying, "Mitchell is a kind-hearted man, so if you cause a fuss, he might be heartbroken again to find out he was the cause." Nick was worried and told me, just apologize to him already. That will make him feel better, but I had absolutely no intention of apologizing. If it comes down to it, I'll punch Manager Johnson and quit. I spit out the same words I had said to Nick at the time in front of Sharon and drained my wine. She had been silently listening to my story while sipping her wine, but after hearing that, she put down her glass and quietly said,
Terry, don't stoop to that scum's level.
I was reminded of her during the milk incident. Her slanted eyes were raised even higher.
Actually, I had another story for you today.
What is it? She finished her wine with a defiant smile.
Good and smiling.
Manager Johnson, surprised, took off his silver-rimmed glasses and looked at me.
The major family chain with 1,000 stores nationwide.
I was standing in front of his desk, reporting on the sales. The manager pondered for a moment and leaned forward, asking me excitedly, when did you start dealing with them? They contacted me. I've handled a few small, sudden tasks with tight deadlines for them in the past. I was around quite often, so maybe they felt sorry for me. They contacted me this time. May I take charge of this? He suddenly changed his attitude and said in a sweet voice,
Harold, you seem a little worn out recently, so you should take it easy.
No, I'm fine. Besides, they specifically requested me to.
Enough. I'll handle this matter. You back off and assist. I'll let you prepare the materials for the negotiation. Get back to work.
Interrupting my words, he turned his back to me swiftly. His back seemed to silently taunt me with, now I'm surely up for a promotion. Ha. On the day of the meeting, as I was about to leave with Manager Johnson, Mitchell came up to me with some documents.
I don't know if this will be of any use.
What he handed me was a document comparing promotional goods from about 100 specialty dessert shops across the country. It was something he had gathered over many years.
I thought this might come in handy. I used to visit dessert shops across the country, both as a hobby and to gain practical knowledge. It might give you some insights on how to differentiate from other shops.
Mitchell, this is really precious. Thank you. I'll make good use of it. I thanked him and headed to the negotiation. Waiting nervously in the conference room of the Good and Smile Inc. headquarters, Manager Johnson and I sat down.
The promotion manager on their side is a young woman. She might be easy to sway on this case. Ha!
He said with a chuckle. Just then, the door opened and a woman appeared.
I apologize for keeping you waiting.
We got up and said hello. Idiot. The person you said was easy is my sis. I looked at Sharon and yelled inside my heart. She got a job at a diner where she used to work part-time after graduating from high school. After working for 6 years, she passed a promotion exam and became a store manager. Her hard work and innovative ideas led to a significant increase in the diner's sales. As a result, she was promoted to the head office, where she now works as a promotion manager. She often told me that the effort she put in as a manager is now helping her in her current job. I realized and knew how great Sharon was when I started working, and I really respected her passion for her work. Although I'm her younger bro, she always carried herself like a successful businesswoman, and she looked especially cool today, which made me proud.
We're in charge of your company. I'm Johnson. Nice to meet you.
Manager Johnson greeted her with a modest attitude.
Isn't Harold in charge?
When Sharon asked him that, Manager Johnson laughed and said he has only been with the company for 3 years and lacks experience, so I will take care of it.
I see.
She glanced at me. I was reminded of that day. After dinner with her, I told her about Manager Johnson. She said, while drinking her wine,
Actually, I had another thing to talk to you about today, Terry.
What is it?
Terry, you're in charge of our company, right?
Yes, but I've only been handling minor cases. It's tough to break into your company because it has strong connections with other companies.
At a recent meeting, our company officially decided to open a new dessert specialty store. Your company has just developed a special process for paper, right? It's perfect for both promotional materials and interior design for this store, so we'd like to hear about it.
I leaned in eagerly. We've got lots of new designs coming out. If we could get an order, it would be a huge help for our company. She crossed her arms and thought for a moment before speaking.
I bet that manager will take this case from you two, just like what happened with Mitchell. Okay, let's keep it a secret that I'm your sis until the day of the negotiation.
Why?
Just wait and see. I'll expose his true colors.
She chuckled. We exchanged greetings and made small talk. Until then, Manager Johnson had been behaving like an enthusiastic manager, skillfully engaging in conversation. However, when the negotiation began, he quickly became quiet and passed everything on to me. It was clear that he doesn't know about our company's products and is just trying to gloss over his lack of knowledge.
I'm concerned about the durability of plant-based products. Manager Johnson, could you explain?
When Sharon asked that, he again said, Harold will explain, and passed it to me. Just when I was about to start explaining, she said with a frustrated look,
I asked you, Manager Johnson. You haven't answered any of my questions. Do you know nothing about it?
No, that's not the case at all. It's about dividing roles. Harold, explain it quickly. Isn't she angry because you're dilly-dallying? Don't disgrace me.
He said this, sweating bullets while prodding me.
No more, thanks?
She said flatly. Then she looked at me and said, Terry, I'm surprised you can work under such a boss. Sharon. Manager Johnson looked back and forth between us with his mouth opening and closing like a goldfish.
Terry, your sister.
Sharon stood up and bowed.
Thank you for always taking care of my brother. I am Terry's sister.
He hastily stood up from his chair and addressed me.
Harold, you should have told me about this in advance.
I'm sorry, she said she would introduce herself during the meeting.
Manager Johnson, I heard you snatched the work your subordinates struggled to get and made it your achievement. And you got promoted to section manager. It's unbelievable for an elite.
Sharon said with a sarcastic smile. Then Manager Johnson retorted, I don't need to hear that from a high school graduate like you.
A friend of mine from the restaurant industry happened to work with you and told me a lot. Don't preach to a university graduate elite, acting so pompous while you were just a restaurant manager.
I was infuriated and confronted him. Hold on a second. My sister, she gave up on going to college for my sake. Ever since our mother passed away, she has been like a parent to me, working all the time during her prime years.
Terry.
After she became a manager, she spent sleepless nights studying several languages. She has studied so hard that she can communicate with foreign tourists who come to the restaurant, and that led to a significant increase in the number of foreign tourists. She thought of all kinds of strategies, negotiated with the headquarters, went out on foot, and worked tirelessly. She has come this far by putting in a lot of effort. She's much more amazing than you, who can only snatch your subordinates' work. I said this while shaking with anger. Manager Johnson said, looking at me with a mocking attitude, it's common for a subordinate to be a stepping stone for their boss. If you don't like it, you should get promoted yourself. What the hell are you talking about? As I was about to grab him, Sharon stopped me and said, thank you, Terry. I was very happy that you defended me. But it's okay now. She picked up the cell phone that had been turned over on the table. Sharon, looking at the cell phone, it seemed to have been on a call the whole time. Then she spoke into the phone. Did you hear that? Please, come in. Manager Johnson looked pale and said, What's going on? After a while, the conference room door opened. What? Why are you here? To my surprise, our boss, Sales Department Manager Merritt, came in.
Manager Merritt.
Manager Johnson stumbled and fell on his butt.
What a pathetic sight, Manager Johnson. The mask of the elite employee has come off.
Manager Merritt stood in front of him and looked down at him with a pitying expression. Then, squatting down in front of him, Manager Merritt put his hand on Johnson's shoulder and said, I couldn't believe it when I heard from Sharon. But you were really such a person.
If you keep doing this, you will lose your subordinates' trust, and the organization itself won't be able to function. You lack awareness as a manager. Start over from a sales office in the countryside.
Manager Merritt, please, not that.
He was forcibly made to stand by the subordinates of Manager Merritt who entered, and he left the room.
I met Mr. Merritt at the time of my restaurant. He used to come to my restaurant as a customer almost every day. At that time, he had just become a manager, and I also had become a restaurant manager. So we started talking about our work troubles and complaints. Before we knew it,
she said this while looking at Manager Merritt. So the person you're dating is Manager Merritt. The two of them awkwardly looked at each other. Manager Merritt said to me in a sincere tone, "Sorry to surprise you. I was planning to greet you properly at another time, but I wanted to take this opportunity to express my feelings. I'm thinking of marrying Sharon. Can you give us your blessing?" Startled, I stammered, "Be blessing. If she chooses you, I have no objections. Please take care of my sister," and bowed my head.
The issue with Manager Johnson is due to my lack of management. I'm truly sorry. You don't need to worry about Mitchell. I'll handle it appropriately.
Mitchell's face surfaced at his words. Sharon returned Mitchell's materials as she spoke.
Please tell Mitchell that these materials were very helpful. Thanks to them, I've come up with an idea to differentiate ourselves from other companies.
Not just Mitchell, but Nick was worried about you too. Apparently, he intended to expose Manager Johnson's harassment and gather evidence to help you.
With that, he gave me a smile. "Nick, I was a little surprised by the uncharacteristic action of him, who usually avoids trouble, but I felt warmth in my heart."
We have a good team. Let's continue working together to do great work.
He tapped my shoulder as he said this. "Yes?" I nodded with resolve. Sharon saw me off to the lobby as I left. "I'll have the documents ready by our next meeting."
Good, I'll be counting on you, Terry.
She called out to my retreating back.
No need for your big sister to protect you anymore.
Huh? When I turned around, she had a lonely look on her face.
After all, you have plenty of people around you who care about you, don't you?
Sharon.
You even protected me earlier. I knew it all along, but you've grown up.
She had tears welling up in her eyes.
It's a strange feeling, happy and yet sad.
Then she wiped the tears that had fallen and said with a smile that looked just like our late mother,
"Thanks to you, I've been able to get this far. Ever since Mom passed away, you've always been by my side. Thank you. I'll be counting on you from now on."
That's my line. Thank you for always taking care of me. I tried not to cry, but it was no use. Memories from my childhood flooded back. "Be happy with Manager Merritt," I said in a choked voice, then turned my back on her.
Yay!
I heard her tearful voice behind me and walked on, looking up so my tears wouldn't fall. By the time I stepped outside, the sun had considerably set. The setting sun shone beams of farewell light through the gaps between the skyscrapers. I took a big, deep breath and started walking slowly. When I get back to the office, I'll invite Nick and Mitchell out for a good drink tonight. Before I knew it, my pace quickened and I panted as I walked through that light-dyed cityscape. And then, pushed on by the warm light, I found myself running without realizing it.
All of my peers have their own families. What's left of me, who has no wife or kids, if you take away my job? Honestly, there are times when I regret having focused solely on my work. Well, it can't be helped. I love my job. I love the connections I make through it. My name is Kevin Miller. I'm 58. I took an early retirement offer from my previous company and was unemployed until recently. Fishing, camping, and trips to the spa, I thought I'd finally be living the relaxed, retired life of my dreams. But oddly enough, nothing really satisfied me. I longed for this kind of freedom when I was employed, yet I felt overwhelmed by it. Then I learned that a branch of the company I used to work for was hiring mid-career employees. It was a small-scale recruitment to fill some positions. I applied on a whim and luckily got the job. On my first day, I was nervous as hell. Man, it's been decades since I felt this way. New environments are so thrilling. As I was trying to get my bearings, a young female employee approached me with a smile.
Good morning. You're the new hire, right?
Good morning. Yes, I'm Kevin Miller. Nice to meet you.
I'm Mrs. Tammy Johnson, in charge of training. Let me know if you have any questions.
Mrs. Johnson, who seemed young enough to be my daughter, appeared very dependable. She was a lovely woman with a radiant smile. She stood out in the office, shining brightly. Perhaps it's because the overall atmosphere of the company was so gloomy that she stood out. Yes, the company had a pretty dark vibe. I heard the company had been underperforming for a while. I should do my part, however small, to lift the spirits of the company. That's what I thought. I was placed in the department with vacancies and was trained on the basics by Mrs. Johnson. The system here was different from the main company where I previously worked. I was puzzled. It's an old type system. They haven't transitioned to the newer one yet. I made some mistakes along the way. No one really reprimanded me for being new and joining mid-career. But there was one person who teased me. It was Mr. Jake Wilson, a year older than Mrs. Johnson. Jake had a rather nonchalant attitude. He seemed resigned, like nothing could turn around the company's performance. When I made a couple of blunders, he remarked, "That's what you get from the bottom tire."
Don't drag us down, okay? If our performance worsens any further, the company's done for.
Mr. Wilson, please watch your words.
I'm just stating the facts, right? Take care and do your best, bottom tire.
After he left, Mrs. Johnson apologized to me.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Miller. Please forgive him.
It's okay. Though, it's my first time being called bottom tire right off the bat.
He acts like that just because he graduated from a top university. So annoying.
Kind words or bad, what you give out eventually comes back to you. Even with his prestigious education, I wonder if he's aware of this. Or is he knowingly being this rude? Either way, I felt that he's a sad man. A few weeks after that, unexpectedly, Mrs. Johnson, my trainer, made a major mistake regarding an order. Everyone from the related department was hustling to fix it, and the boss went to apologize to the customer. During lunch break, I approached Johnson, who was hanging her head low at his desk. I might not be the best person to say this, but it's not the end of the world.
Oh, Mr. Miller, thank you.
It's fine. No major harm done. You shouldn't dwell on it too much.
But I made the manager apologize.
That's what management does. They apologize and protect employees. It's part of the job.
But it was an important client. I've discredited our trust with them.
Mrs. Johnson.
Exactly. She should reflect more on it.
Suddenly, Mr. Jake Wilson's sarcastic words made Mrs. Johnson's shoulders shake.
Because of that, our work became harder. What are you going to do about it, huh?
I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson.
Did this old man's incompetence rub off on you, huh?
Stop, please. He has nothing to do with it.
Both of you bottom feeders, a match made in heaven, right?
Mr. Wilson laughed out loud. I couldn't stay silent any longer and decided to speak up. Enough. I don't think it's a good idea to lower your rating by yourself like this.
What? Who do you think you're talking to, newbie?
Everyone makes mistakes. We just need to cover for each other, like now.
Mr. Miller.
Besides, unlike me, she is competent. She won't make the same mistake again. Upon hearing this, she wiped her tears and straightened up. She was back to her usual self. Perhaps not liking being talked back to, Wilson left with a sharp click of his tongue. I've grown accustomed to the company since joining a few months ago. I've become approachable, and people have started to approach me more as well. I began to see the company's challenges once I started interacting with different departments. A culture resistant to new ideas from younger employees, lacking a spirit of challenge. Old-fashioned thinking that values grit over efficiency. I learned about these issues from some friendly colleagues. During lunch breaks, I started discussing ideas with a few colleagues who were also concerned.
Well, it would cost money, and I can see why the higher-ups might be hesitant.
It does take time and effort to change the way we work.
But this company needs to change soon.
There's a break area in the corner of the factory with a coffee maker. I was so engrossed in our discussion that I didn't notice him approaching.
Hey, trying to score points, loser.
Suddenly, something cold drenched my head. The smell of sweetness. It was Ken Coffee. Jake Wilson was pouring coffee over my head.
Annoying bottom feeders. A discussion. Who do you think you are?
The workers looked taken aback by his outburst. I was too shocked to speak.
Can't do anything right, and now you're complaining about the company and making friends. Cut the crap.
Mr. Wilson, let's calm down a bit.
Shut up, all of you.
It was at that moment I saw someone running toward us with a panicked look on his face. Is that?
What are you doing there? Stop it right now.
Mr. David.
Know your place, kid. Do you even realize who you messed with?
Mr. David.
Mr. Miller, I'm truly sorry. Please forgive me.
It was Mr. David, who's supposed to be a manager at the headquarters now. Seeing him apologize sincerely to me, Both Jake Wilson and the other workers were dumbfounded.
Mr. Miller used to be my boss. He was a top executive at the headquarters.
What?
Mr. David took out a towel and wiped my wet head. I also used my own towel to wipe my face. It's been a while, Mr. David. What brings you to the branch office today?
I came for a meeting about an audit, but why are you here, Mr. Miller?
I briefly explained my story of being hired mid-career at the branch office. Took early retirement, but soon got bored and wanted to work again. Applied for a mid-career position at the branch. I was luckily hired. While I was talking, Mr. Wilson was shaking like a leaf, looking pale as a ghost.
I see. So, why did you do this?
I'm truly sorry.
Who said you could apologize? I asked why you did this to Mr. Miller.
By then, a crowd of employees who'd heard the commotion had gathered. Mrs. Johnson ran over from within the crowd and handed me a towel. I wiped off the coffee again.
Mr. Miller, are you okay? What on earth?
Yeah. Mr. Wilson was completely flustered. It seemed he didn't know how to respond to Mr. David. I touched Mr. David's shoulder and asked him not to scold Mr. Wilson. He was just frustrated about the company's stagnant performance. Right. You graduated from a top university and everyone acknowledges you're a talented employee. But even after giving it your all, the company's performance didn't improve and you felt responsible, didn't you? He was stunned. He was still so young, both mentally and physically. I genuinely felt envious. Your excellence made you feel frustrated, disappointed in yourself. You just needed to vent your stress on something or someone, like an old mid-career hire like me.
That's true. I'm truly sorry.
It's okay. It's just a youthful mistake. It's an old guy's job to laugh it off and forgive.
Oh, Mr. Miller.
I held Mr. Wilson, who was now on his knees and sobbing, by his shoulders to support him. Later on, with a recommendation from a few employees and Mr. David, I became a member of a committee. It was a committee aiming to identify and solve fundamental issues to improve the branch office's performance. At my personal request, both Mr. Wilson and Mrs. Johnson also joined the committee. We analyzed the strengths and weaknesses of the branch, discussing deeply several times about what was missing to achieve our goals. During our efforts to overhaul the old system, Mr. David played a key role in securing support from the headquarters. Thanks to him, the branch was able to upgrade the system with minimal hassle. We made significant changes where decisions were being obstructed or new ideas were being ignored. Gradually, the organization began to change, incorporating and considering the opinions of younger employees in every department. Things sure have changed. When I first arrived, the office felt so gloomy, but now it's so much brighter, and there's a lively interaction among the employees.
What are you talking about as if it's someone else's achievement? Isn't it all thanks to you, Mr. Miller?
That's right. Hold your head up high, Chairman.
As the one entrusted with leading the company, I utilized every ounce of my experience and connections to boost our performance. Thanks to the collaboration of my colleagues, our company's performance is steadily improving. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders for now.
By the way, what do you intend to do about that proposal?
Which proposal?
Don't play dumb. It's about the offer for the advisory role.
A few days ago, Mr. David told me that the headquarters wants me for an advisory position. I had put it on hold, but with these two pushing me, I guess it's about time I give an answer. What do you guys think? Should I take up the advisory role at the headquarters or stay at the branch?
For me, I can't really say.
Me neither. Making such a big decision is overwhelming, but
Mrs. Johnson looked me straight in the eyes.
I wish you could stay with us for another 2 years, or even just 1 more year. We want you to continue guiding us.
I feel the same. I believe most of the employees feel this way. We want to learn more from you, Mr. Miller, and we want to make this company even better.
Looking into the bright eyes of these two young individuals, I felt grateful for my decision to join this place. I want to live up to their expectations and aim even higher. There's no way I can think about retirement just yet. That's what I strongly felt.